have a guest speaker today, so be good.
Yeah, you have to set that expectations for them because young children or young adults, they're not children. They always think like if it's a new adult, like there's new rules. No, the rules are the same.
Yep.
So that's good. Okay, perfect. I don't want to keep you super long because I know we both have to get to teaching. So I just wanted to take today to briefly go over what you thought of those articles I sent you and to cement a teaching, a strategy, if you will, and a goal for us. So if I recall from the last time we met, let me look at my notes. I put them in my textbook, and my textbook is heavy. If
Yeah.
I recall last meeting, we decided we wanted to work on transition times. That was your big,
Yeah.
that was the desire, was to work on transition times. So I'm going to set that as our goal, is transition times. But I want us to set a tangible goal we can track. So I don't want to just say we're going to shorten transition times. I want there to be like an area we can aim for. So I was going to suggest something like I will get transitions to under 2 minutes, or something like that. Does that sound okay to you?
Transition for 2 minutes, you said?
And that was just a suggestion if you think that's too short or if you think that's too long, but I think we should set a goal that we can aim for so that we can track your progress and
Okay.
we can always reassess if we need to.
All right, yeah, I can try that. Like I kind of like started like not waiting for everyone, and that's what I'm learning as a new teacher. And that was something I struggled with when I was doing student teaching. That my mentor was like, "Hey, you're spending too much time waiting for kids to get situated. They're never gonna do that. So you just gotta keep going, you know." And if that's it's kind of like it's almost like it's on them that they're taking their sweet time, but you also have to like have that control and just be like, hey, put your foot down, like let's take care of business, and if you want to follow along, that we follow along. And so like I've been kind of like timing myself like on my iPhone, like I'll say like 1 or 2 minutes. And I'm like, guys, if you don't log in 1 or 2 minutes, you're just gonna miss the presentation, and you can watch it later. That's all I tell them, and then you're going to be lost. So I recommend you to stay focused.
Are they responding well to that so far?
So. I mean, you still. It's harder with virtual because it's like we still got to mark them present regardless if they do the work or not, and so it's like it's kind of stupid.
Yeah. Well, I think that if you've introduced that to your class, it's something you want to follow through with, especially because, if you've set that expectations and it suddenly disappears, your students might get mixed signals. So I would definitely continue to reinforce that. And that was actually the suggestion I was going to make for your strategy is it was going to be two-part, and it sounds like you've already done one, which is to time yourself. I think that's a great idea to have your iPhone or something out where you can set yourself a physical timer that says 2 minutes and
Yeah.
you can watch that time go down. I also think it would be very beneficial to you, and this could perhaps be our strategy, to vocalize the steps. So I think you should say out loud, I am setting a timer for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Two
I do
minutes
that.
starts now. And then what I do with my students is I watch the clock and I'm like, okay, checking in, you have 1 minute remaining.
Yeah.
And then, I don't count down like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but I reinforce, you have 1 minute remaining. In the next minute, I expect for you to be blank. So I don't just count down, I reinforce expectations. So I think that strategy of vocalizing your expectations while also managing time, I think that's a strong strategy that we could implement into your class.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was looking back at the articles I sent you. I opened them on my phone because I was walking my dog. The one I sent you from Edutopia called
Yes.
Mastering Classroom Transitions, I thought that one had some really great examples of like ways you can verbalize your expectations, and I think it actually did them in a way it did it in steps. So it was like step number 1, secure student attention. Step number 2, explain the procedure. Step number 2, signal to start, or step number 3, signal to start. Step number 4, initiate transition. And then step number 5, observe. I think doing something like that would be really beneficial to you, to walk them through step number 1, this is what we're going to do. Step number 2, this is how long I'm giving you. Step number 3, you know, time begins now, and then monitoring them as they go.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that's something you could work into your class?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I kind of like the kind of like the attention getter, but I think that's more of like, I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to do it. Well, I guess I'm not gonna make an excuse, but I mean, I would like to try an attention getter prior to going back to class, like in person. I think that would help as well, because they do. So if I don't do it with them now, they're gonna be, you know, they're like, what the hell is this, you know? And so probably start doing an attention getter, like maybe a clap back or something like that. Even though they might not unmute themselves because of the age group, but at least they can, like, okay, my teacher is clapping for a reason. He's trying to get my attention. So.
And I think that's a really strong idea to say, if I set those expectations now, they'll translate when we go back, because it's true. Just because this is virtual and later is going to be in person doesn't mean your standards have changed and your expectations remain the same. Something I do to get my students' attention is, I'm not sure, I know it's a feature in Teams, but I'm not sure how many capabilities your students have. I make them raise their hand in Teams with with the hand icon.
Yes.
So that way they don't have to turn their camera back on, and I can just watch who's putting their hand up. So I use that as an attention getter often, or I also use that to signal a return. So this may help with your transitions. If you give them 3 minutes to do something, I set the expectation that when they are done with the task, they put their hand up in Teams so that I know that they've returned their attention to me.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
So utilize the functions that Teams has, and then maybe that continues as a raising hand physically in the classroom. So, you know, when you're done, put your hand up, or maybe that turns into like a hand signal later on when they're physically with you. But I think setting that expectation, or that trigger for them, that you are expecting to see something happen to acknowledge their attention, I think that's a good idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Well, just to summarize so that we're all in the same place, you are going to work on transitions. That is our our goal. Our end goal is to lower our transitions to under 2 minutes. We'll reevaluate that as we go. If 2 minutes is too long and we need to cut it down to a minute or a minute and a half, we can do that. But I think we should start with 2 and go from there. And
what about like letting students in, so like it's my first year, right? It's my first year teaching, and so like I know that you have to put those like procedures, routines in place, but it's like it's different with virtual and like kids barely knowing how to like log in and Wi-Fi and all that. So like what do you like? Do you give them like 5 minutes to like walk into class, like as if it was in a school building, and then you start? Because I haven't even like seen that in real life yet, like or like I've seen it in my student teaching, but like I have not put anything into place like in my own classroom, like in a physical classroom.
Yeah. So I do 2 things, and this is just a little trick that another teacher told me, and it works. I've seen it in practice. I actually log in to the meeting about 2 minutes early, because the kids get a notification that I've logged in and they freak out and they think, oh, class has started. And so they show up early.
Yeah.
So that gives me a little more wiggle room.
Yeah.
So that might be something. And then something else that I do that I find is really successful is I do a do now. I give them a task and I have it written on the screen. You have until class begins to do blank. And sometimes it's answer a question in the chat. Sometimes it's go to this link and take a quiz. Or sometimes it's as simple as log into class on the hub. You know, but I set the expectation you have until 9:02 to complete blank. And I just reinforce that. I check in and I say, it's 8:01. You have 1 minute to complete the task on the screen. You have 30 seconds to complete the task on the screen. And then when that time hits, like they have had time to do what is expected of them. And that's it. I start.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
And it can be difficult to do, especially with younger ages, but I think if you set the clear expectation that the minute they walk into your room, whether it's virtual or physical, they are there to get started. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of this look at transition times because, transition times aren't just between assignments, they're from the moment they walk in to the moment that they leave.
Yes.
So I think implementing these things we're talking about, setting the timer, and verbalizing their time with them, perhaps, from the time the first kid walks in, I always feel bad for the first kid that walks in because they hear me reiterate the same thing 50 times.
Yep.
But as soon as those kids start walking in, setting that expectation, class begins in 4 minutes, be ready to begin in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You have to give them a task. Just if you are cognizant of time and are verbalizing time, they are forced to be cognizant of time.
Yes. So this is so like, I know there's days where we're just like, oh my God, I don't feel like teaching today. And so I had that moment yesterday for the very first time. This whole time I've been teaching, I'm like, come on, I got this. But yesterday, like, it's not because I was running low on energy. It was just like, man, like, it's just like it was progress reports, and then kids are like asking me about grades. I'm like, I got upset. I'm like, dude, now you want to ask me about progress reports? Are you crazy? Like, I've been pushing you for the past 4 days and you don't want to turn anything in, and now that the grades are, you know what I mean? And so I was like, I'm not gonna waste my time talking about grades. And like, I kind of sounded like, like kind of rude or mean, but I was like, no, like, I was like, you need to take ownership of your work. But I do like the whole thing about like starting class early, and I've done that like maybe twice or three times, but 2 or 3 times. And the kids are like, what are you doing, Mr. Morales? And I'm like, starting class early, like, so you can check in and we don't waste time. And they're like, oh, okay. And then, but like what I did was I put like a motivational video for like 3 minutes, like before class like officially starts. And it like helped me track my time. I'm like, okay, after these 3 minutes, once the video's done, I'm going to start my class. I already put the link in the chat as like logging into Pear Deck or Nearpod. So I've been doing that lately, like do now, but maybe having like a physical like on the screen. I think that will help me as well. So they don't like say, oh, I didn't see it in the chat,
I think that's great. And I think doing little things like that, showing a video that is timed, that has an end time. So you don't have to necessarily say, in the next 3 minutes, it's when this video is over.
Yeah.
We are starting.
Yes.
That is your chance. I usually tell mine, you have until I'm finished with attendance to be ready to go, because as soon as I'm done with attendance, that's it. So they have a task when they get in. And, you always have a couple of kids that are late. So I tell them,
Hold on, give me a second, because I think I don't know if my brother fell, because I think he's taking a shower. Give me a second.
Okay, sure.
Let me check on him. He's like, I just dropped the soap. He's like,
Okay.
bad, right? And I was like, yeah, bro, I just check it on you. I don't want you, because it's kind of slippery, the bathtub. And so if you're not like careful, you can slip. My
Nice of you to check on him.
Yes, I don't want to get sidetracked, but like my dad's like 65 and he's just an old man, and so right now like we're living in a loft or whatever, and so my dad loves coming or whatever, and so like sometimes we're like, Dad, you need to take a shower, like you stink, like not that he stinks, but like we try to push him like, hey Dad, you need to take a shower, and he's like, oh, okay. And then my brother's like, you need to check on him because we don't want him to fall, because then we're liable. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So then I'm like, Dad, you're okay? You're okay? And then like as I'm telling him that, he's like almost like falling, and I'm like, oh crap, like yeah.
I get it. I'm protective of my dad too. I understand. Well, I don't want to keep you because I know that you have a lot going on today. It's open house for us today, so I have to go get ready for open house.
Yes, ma'am.
We haven't had that yet, so we'll see how that goes this afternoon. But I just
How are y'all setting that up?
open
Like,
house. It's virtual.
oh, okay.
So they've made everybody meets to hear the message from the principal, and then there's a different teams meeting for every subject.
Ooh, I like that. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
our school's
it's
kind
really,
of behind on that.
that's okay. I mean, we're all figuring out at our own pace.
Yeah, every campus is different, but I maybe I'll suggest because I think the parents need to know what's going on in the students' like schedule and just grades, and it's yeah.
I agree. And so I'm highly encouraging my students to bring their parents tonight. I've always been a big let me talk to your parents type of
Yes,
teacher. Even if it's good things, I always want to talk to the parents.
yes.
So, okay, so our goal is to shorten your transition times to under 2 minutes. That's our goal. And we're going to get there by keeping a timer of some kind, watch, phone, whatever works best for you, as long as you are consistently timing yourself.
Mhm.
And then you are going to verbalize time and expectations so that students know how much time they have, how much time is left, and what is expected to be done by the time the timer goes off.
Okay. And do you like I'm saying, like I've been in a physical classroom, but at the same time virtually is kind of a little different and everyone's kind of like um, getting the hang of it. But so like so do you tell them, hey guys, look, I'm gonna lecture for like let's just say lecture for 20 minutes. After those 20 minutes, you're gonna do this assignment. You're gonna take care of this. Like, do you lay it out all at one time, or do you or because like this is what I've been doing lately. I've been doing like I put the do now in the chat, wait for everyone to log in, start timing myself. And then you have those late comers, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, look in the chat, join. You're good. Don't worry. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. We usually do like a pair deck, and then lately we've been doing like a do now with them at the end, like almost like at the middle of class before we let them go and do their work individually. Um, and so like I kind of like catch myself like wasting too much time there as well. And I'm like, I know I need to keep that shorter so that I can still give them a good chunk of time so they can still work on their assignment. And but they start asking me questions, and like I know that's normal, but I'm just like, should I keep a timer for that? And then at the very end, should I like say, okay, guys, if you didn't, I always try to end it like if you didn't finish it after school. Don't work on it in a different classroom. But yeah, I guess that would help me with my expectations because I could just simply say, hey guys, log in to the hub, and I'm kind of teaching myself that. I can say like log into the hub and check, like look at the agenda for today. We're gonna click on this video and then we're gonna do the Google form. And I already have it in steps for them. But what I usually do after I'm done lecturing, like going through the presentation with them, I'll just tell them, rather than like waiting for all the kids to get on the hub and all that, I'll just like if I'm showing a video or if I'm doing a Google form with them, like for as a do now, I'm like, boom, I just put the Google form on the chat, and then I'll put the video after I'm done with the after I'm done with the do now, so they can like know, okay, Mr. Morales put this here, so we can do it together. And then for the remaining part of our class is going to be the video with the Google form at the same time, and I just tell them like to split the screen. But I guess maybe figuring out a better way of doing that where they can take ownership of logging into the hub and checking what we're going to be doing. I have like one or two that probably do that out of the 115 kids because they're like, I wonder what we're doing today. So sometimes they'll check online, but I don't make it a requirement. So maybe maybe making it a requirement, like, hey, before class starts, log into the hub, check out what we're doing. And also like maybe just having an agenda as like maybe as a slide and just like leaving it out like, hey guys, we're gonna do this, this is do now, log in. We're gonna be doing this, 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 and this. And lately I've been telling my students like the earlier you get to class, the quicker we kind of like break out. And they love that. They love that, So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I definitely use an agenda in my class personally. It's not for everyone, but I do. And I always share the agenda with my class. And so I will take, the minute and a half to be like, this is what we're doing today. And I won't say we're going to spend 20 minutes on a lecture and 20 minutes on this, but I'll say, number one, we began the day with our do now. Thank you for your completion of the do now. And I reinforce, that they met expectations. Yeah. And then I'll say, number two, we're going to move into, if it's a lecture that day, I'll say, we're going to move into a lecture about Jamestown. And then I'll say, number three, I'm expecting you to complete this Nearpod during our time together. So I don't say like, I don't make it cold. I don't say like, we're doing this for 20 and we're doing this for 20. And then I say, when we're going to end the day with an exit ticket. And once everything has been completed in class, you do have a homework assignment. So I lay out the expectations for the day in an agenda so that they physically see that. And it's more, I don't want to say more so, I think it's just as much for me as it is for them. Yeah. Because when I hear myself saying, this is what we're doing today, it reminds me of what is expected and how I'm going to keep myself accountable while simultaneously showing them like, oh, I need to be listening to the lecture and then I need to switch gears and do this. So I think continuing an agenda is a great idea, and maybe see what happens if you implement that or put it on a slide and just show them like, this is what's going to happen today.
I'll try that for sure. Yeah.
Maybe it will inspire. And if it doesn't work, like I said, agendas aren't for everybody. So there's no harm in trying. Don't spend an extended amount of time giving them detailed items on an agenda, because then that goes against our goal of transition time. But, take 1 to 2 minutes off the top of class and just set that expectation for the day. Here's what we're doing. Here's the order we're doing it in. And this is what I expect before class is over. And that can also help them get on task because they're aware ahead of time what is expected of them in the lesson.
Yes.
And it's never too early to start that expectation. I mean, 8th grade, they're going to go to high school next year, and the expectations don't get any easier. So, if you get pushback or if you feel that they're hesitating, that doesn't mean that you're doing it incorrectly. They're at that age where change is unpleasant.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get discouraged if it takes a couple of days to implement, just like these transition strategies. I think it will be detrimental if you start something and then we abandon it.
Yeah.
So whatever you start, feel confident that this is something we can see through.
Yes, ma'am. I do want to say, like, what about, like, I guess, there's a lot of, our education system kind of like teaches our students to kind of like follow the rules, like do this, and so I know some are not going to follow the rules, and so they're not going to follow along. What do you recommend putting into place? Like if, let's say, like I have 20 people or 20 students in my class at that moment on Microsoft Teams, but only 15 of them are logging in to Nearpod or Pear Deck. What do you do with the other 5?
So I actually had this conversation with my principal yesterday because I'm having the same problem in a couple of my classes. I've got that it's a smaller number, but it is a tangible chunk of students that just won't get on board. And it was really bogging me down too, because I very much want every kid to participate.
Yeah, exactly.
My principal was saying that, you set the expectations for everyone, but you don't punish those that choose to follow directions by holding them behind for those who choose not to. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
So if there are 20 kids in the classroom,
yes,
and 15 of them are following directions, it's not fair to those 15 that you keep them from learning by spending 15 minutes trying to get the other 5 kids.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So don't just leave them behind. I will constantly be like, I will say like, Mr. Morales, have you logged into the Nearpod yet? Like, I will check in on them and let them know, like, I see you and I know that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, but you can't halt the lesson.
Oh yeah, definitely,
To
definitely.
wait
I've
for
learned
someone
that. I've learned that the hard way.
yeah.
Like I'm like, why am I gonna be stopping for like I'm not the kind of person that be like sit down or I don't like like because kids are gonna be kids and I kind of like see myself like I'm not gonna be like getting after them like a lot. And when I say that like I'm gonna be lenient, like I'm gonna let them like roam around if they need to move around, like because they're eighth graders but at the same time keep them accountable for their work. And I guess what I was trying to say, like that was a great idea because I've done that, or they log into Nearpod and then they don't do any of the work. And I'm like, oh, you sneaky little kid. I'm like, I know what you're doing. And so, so like, let's say if they're doing matching, I'm like, hey, Kendall, what's going on? Oh, 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 I'm sorry. And then they start, and I see them and so I do that, but I guess I gotta constantly do that so they can know that I'm, you know, being serious.
Something else that I do that I think a lot of teachers do and is very successful is I always try to phrase things positively and I try to set the positive outcome for them. So instead of coming from a direction of like, Kendall, what are you doing? I say, Kendall, it would be really beneficial for you to do this matching because then you'll have an advantage on your homework.
Yep.
And I try to set that benefit for them. It's not just you're doing your work because you have to. I'll say something like, today we're going to do a writing reflection, and the kids don't like to write necessarily, but my kids don't like to write. So if the task at hand is writing reflection and I know they're going to drag their feet on it, I try to say like, but by completing this writing reflection, we'll be one step closer to completing this task. Yeah. And I try to breathe that into life, that positive expectation or that positive outcome. And by saying, like, if you are successful doing this, it will benefit you because. And I'll say I'm like that with everything. Like I thank them for being on time to class because that means we can spend more time learning. Yeah. I thank them for getting into the hub quickly because that helps me to get them to asynchronous time quicker. So I just try to positively acknowledge and positively reinforce as many things as possible. And sometimes those students that, are dragging their feet, those 5 students that are dragging their feet, if they hear it positively instead of you're not doing your work, if they hear by doing your work there is a benefit, sometimes they're more willing to come around.
Oh no, definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I'm not like always like, hey, what are you doing? But I know you can hear kids in the background, and, they're playing video games, and I'm like, hey, dude, like whatever you're doing at home, I can't control that. I'll tell them straight up like that. I'm like, um, I don't know what you're doing at home, but I would recommend you to follow along because this isn't everything that we're learning right now is going to be on the quiz. The matching is pretty much to help you on the quiz, and it's just giving you a heads up. And then they're like, oh, okay, and that's it.
And I think that's a good way to go about it is you need to make them aware that you are watching what's going on. And that, like you said, while you can't jump through the computer and turn off the video games, like
Yep.
you are aware of the choices they're making and
Yep.
that those choices affect other people. But I myself struggle with waiting for every student to get caught up. And I think you just have to recognize that at some point, you're hurting the other students by waiting for those who choose not to cooperate.
Yes, you're right about that. My fiance was kind of telling me like, she's like, your first couple years, babe, or Miss Morales, like, you're gonna realize that you can't like I guess in other words is like you're not going to be able to reach every kid, every student, and you're just going to have to like get over that. Like, so like you're saying, like if 20 people or 20 students are following along, but you're missing the other five, it's just like that's the way it works. And I'm like I don't want to let go of those other five kids, but like what you're saying is like you're hindering their learning because you're focused on the five kids when you should be focusing on the 15 or 20 students, that you have in front of you that are willing to learn, and they'll come along eventually. But that's the hard part.
I don't like to think that I'm leaving them behind because I too think that that's a horrible way to think about it. I just think about it that I'm going to reach those five a different way. So maybe, direct instruction is not the correct way to do this. So I will send emails or messages in Teams, or I use Remind, and I'll just say, Mr. Morales, I noticed you didn't participate in class today. I just want to remind you that this was the assignment, and I try to get them that way. So it's not that you're leaving them behind, you're just going a different route.
Yeah.
And I think that something that is important to remember is to utilize your resources. I CC the Dean of Instruction on every email that I send to a student who is not meeting expectations in my class. Just so that they know. First, it keeps record. So if I have to have a conversation about a student, I can say I've emailed, Mr. Morales on the 10th, the 15th, the 21st, and the 27th.
Yeah.
It lets the dean know that I'm concerned about a student, and it lets the student know I'm serious because they can see the dean has been CC'd on the email.
Yeah.
So, you don't necessarily, and I teach high school kids. So, I teach at an early college high school. So the expectations are a little higher. So you might not have to go as drastic as CCing an AP on everything.
Yeah.
But utilize your resources around you. Ask other teachers. I'm having a problem with Johnny. Is it just social studies, or is this a study habit problem?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So utilize the people around you.
You're right. Yeah, well, my cohort are kind of upset at me because I deleted their classrooms on Microsoft Teams. So,
yeah,
I kind of started off kind of bad with that, but I don't even know to this day if they restored it. But it's all right. We have to change everything up on Microsoft Teams, anyways. But no, I mean, definitely I I was teaching yesterday, and students like, oh, why did I get this bad grade? I'm like, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. And so I literally put them into another room, and I was like, what's going on? Oh, mister, it's because my internet hasn't been working. I was like, that's not an excuse. Like, we've already been 3 weeks in school, and you need to get it together. Oh, okay, mister, well, can I still turn it on? I'm like, of course, you're still going to turn it on. That's the only way it's going to boost your grade. Because if you don't turn in these 3 assignments, then you're still going to get a bad grade on the report card. That's how it works. Oh, okay. And then I'm like, you're just finding excuses. And I'm like, but the only thing, I need to talk to the AP or whatever. And kind of because none of their contacts, none of the phone numbers work. And I'm like, hey, give me your mom's number. And he was like, oh, it doesn't work. And that's it. And I'm like, man, dude, I kind of want to show up to your house and knock on your door and talk to your parents because I'm not gonna play this. But I've been reaching out to the students' parents on Remind Me and giving them phone calls. Thank God I know Spanish because most of the parents are speaking Spanish, and I'm like, it's not perfect, but I can get by. But yeah. But I that's a really good idea as well. I need to talk to my AP to see if how he feels about me tagging him and every time but that's the expectations. You got to keep them accountable. If you don't keep the students accountable, then they're just like, my teachers don't care about me, then I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
And I think, especially as a new teacher, asking the teachers around you can be very beneficial because maybe they're familiar with this child or they know the home situation. So something I do often is I teach 11th graders. So I'll check with the 10th grade teachers.
Okay.
And I'll say, So I have a student right now who he's logged in every day and has perfect attendance, but has a 0 in my class, has not done a single thing. He shows up every day, but he hasn't done anything. So I reached out to the 10th grade teachers and I said, is this consistent with his work ethic? And they were like, no, that's not like him at all. Something is going on. And that immediately flagged me that I needed to bring in the guidance counselor and his AP, because if that's not his norm, something is going on, but I wouldn't know that because I didn't teach him last year.
Yeah,
So
I see what you're
utilize the
saying.
people around you.
I see what you're saying. I didn't, yeah, this is my first year. And so it's like, and I realized that I had to learn the hard way because a student, let's say his name is David. I was like, David, what's going on? And he's like, or I'll call on him and he wouldn't answer. But I was like, dude, you've been locking in. What the heck? And then so I was like, man, I'm upset. I got mad. I was like, let me put my AirPods on. I'm about to call this kid's parents. And I called, and then the dad answers, and then he's like, "What? My son's not participating. What are you talking about? I see him in class right now." And I was like, "Are you at home right now?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he literally walks into the room. He's like, "Are you not paying attention to Mr. Morales?" Yeah, Dad, yeah. And I was like, "Hey, let you know, your son has not completed 3 assignments." And he's like, "What? David, get on it, you know?" And I'm just like, "But that's what you got to do." And it just that takes a lot of time too, and it's kind of stressful.
It does, and it can be stressful. And I think that's another reason that it's really helpful to utilize other teachers. So I have a couple of kids that I need to make phone calls for, and I reach out to their other teachers. So instead of us all having to call mom, all 6 or 7 of us, we can pool our resources, and one teacher can call and say, I'm representing Mr. Morales's teachers, and obviously we can't speak for other teachers, but instead of 6 individual phone calls bogging down the parents, one "we are collectively concerned" phone call can go a lot further
Yeah,
because
I
the
see what
parents burn out too.
Yeah,
So I would just recommend, trying to, share your concerns with your coworkers and, maybe your AP or your appraiser. Uh,
okay.
and just, it never hurts, because you're right, it can be really stressful, especially when you've got a lot of kids that need your attention. Um, Divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Utilize your resources so that you don't burn yourself out.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. And then so going back to David is because his grandpa passed away, his grandma passed away, and so that's why he was like, you know, and so he's been like sassy with his dad and just like in a weird mood. And I was like, okay, I need to get the counselor involved. And so like I called her real quick and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. Let the other teachers know. And she's like, okay, cool. But it's given me a lot of ideas. Like, so the kids that are not following along get an AP or um, dean of instruction involved.
And it's not meant to be as like a disciplinary thing. It's more to be an awareness.
Yeah,
So that if it comes to a disciplinary thing or a need for correction, you have done everything that you can, and you've documented everything that you can, saying that you have tried,
yeah,
and it's not that it's not working, it's just you needed someone else's perspective. I
yeah,
try to always phrase things positively. I don't want to say like, Mr. Morales just isn't working and someone else needs to deal with him. It's, what I'm doing isn't successful. Can you try a different approach?
yes, yes. I definitely understand.